Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, wherever your time zone is. We'll be starting in just a minute. Can I have a thumbs up if you can hear me okay? Or you can type it in the Q&A. Yay, thank you, thank you. Thank you. I love those little emojis. They're so much fun. All right, I'm going to be getting started in just a minute. We've got a few more people that hopefully are signing on. Again, I think y'all know who I am, but I am Karen Fredericks, or Karen@techvendors.com if you want to email me. If you have any questions about anything CRM related, feel free to type them into the Q&A. I will be trying my best to check it and make sure that I don't miss any of your questions. I do get some really nice questions about both the CRM, Zoho, ACT. I guess you could ask questions about life in general. Don't know if I can answer those, but please feel free to ask any of your questions as we go through this material. This material is kind of fun. It is a little bit complex, but it is one of my kind of favorite topics. So hopefully you'll like it as much as I like it. Okay, so today's meeting is about automating your database using, obviously, automations. So Zoho has, if you go into the setup area and you go into the automation area, they have, what is this, 7 different things. We have workflow rules, we have actions, we have schedules, we have assignments, we have case escalation rules, we have scoring rules, and we have cadences. And cadences, by the way, are the closest thing to the ACT activity series, if any of you were using that. So my first question to you is, why would we want automations? What's the purpose of an automation? Can anybody think of a reason why we might want an automation or an example of where they've used automations? All right, there's no right or wrong answers here. Nobody can think of a reason why they would use an automation? Okay, I'll be giving you a couple of reasons down the road. Maybe you'll think of some more. I'm thinking of a certain person that's installing playground equipment where automations might really help him, because I'm assuming there's going to be a lot of steps involved. I'm thinking of another person who does a lot of educational conferences, and there's a lot of steps involved. So basically, the biggest answer about why we do automations, I guess there's 2 answers. 1, we're just lazy and we want to make life a little bit easier. And 2, 25% of the typical CRM database consists of dead wood. And by dead wood, I mean there's leads. I had one customer recently and I looked into his leads module. He had something like 40,000 names in there. They were coming off of his website. They were coming off of web forms from various places. Never did the first thing with them. Didn't even really realize that they were even in his database. I go through your ACT databases and I'm seeing duplicate contacts. I'm seeing contacts that have no phone number or email addresses. A little hard to reach out to those people. I'm seeing duplicates. I'm just seeing all kinds of stuff. I'm seeing most often just leads that came into our database. Maybe we called them once. It's amazing. I'll look at the edit date and I'll look at the creation date, and they're usually the same. That tells me that's not a good thing. Nothing's happening to those leads. So this might be a new concept if you're coming from the ACT world, because in the ACT world, we did have 4 ways to do automations. Sadly, none of them worked very well. We had the activity series. And can I get a thumbs up if any of you use the activity series in ACT? Okay, one of you did. All right. So somebody used the activity series. And the activity series, somebody else did. Good. So there's 2 of you. The activity series were okay. The big drawback with the activity series was that you had to manually create it. We'll be going into this a little bit later. So in other words, if you forgot to assign the activity series to a person, it never happened. And secondly, sometimes it was kind of a one size fits all. It would schedule 4 or 5 different activities And maybe those activities didn't pertain to a particular client. So you'd have to go back and delete items from the activity series. So they weren't always the best solution. We had Act Connect, which could connect Act to Zapier. So sometimes you had backroom stuff and you wanted to have an automation to get some of that information from the backroom, maybe database that you had, or manufacturing software that you had, or accounting software you had. And we were able to use Zapier. And the trouble with this is Zapier was very limited, very flaky as to what it would allow us to do. And then the bigger problem was that Act got rid of the Act Connect feature that got that whole thing to work last December. So if that was going to be one of the ways you were going to use automations, it has disappeared. We have Act Marketing Automation, which some of you use. If you paid for the higher service, you did have a little bit of automation. Problem is, it mostly revolved around emails. And sometimes you want to do things like change fields, and you want to do things like have tasks scheduled or have meetings scheduled. So it may not always be focused around email. And then we did have Smart Tasks. Did any of you ever try to use Smart Tasks? Again, I love that thumbs up if you ever try to use Smart Tasks. Maybe the better question was, did you ever hear of Smart Tasks? It came out, I think, in 2011. I was trying to do a little research on it, and I really couldn't remember. And it was a great feature. The only problem is it didn't work. And they kept banging away at it and banging away at it. They could never get it to work. Or I got a thumbs down. Yeah, that means someone tried to use the Smart Tasks, and they know what I mean. They never could get it work. And then they Actis quietly removed it. I think in version 21. Again, I'm not 100% sure. I think they played around with it for about 10 years and just never got it to work. And someone said they used AMA, everything was too complicated. Yeah, AMA wasn't necessarily the easiest thing because, again, you might want to automate things and it didn't have anything to do with email. So when we go into automations today, I'm sorry, we're not going to be discussing a few things. One is schedules. So when you go into that customized setup and look in the automation section, you're going to see schedules. Schedules are ways that people have things run like every night. Like maybe every night they wanted to go and get information out of their accounting software and put it into Zoho. That requires programming. I'm not really going to be going into that. We also have case escalation rules. I don't think anybody on this call is using Zoho Desk. That's what we use for support calls. And that's when we can come up with case escalation rules. They are very similar to scoring rules. So I'm not going to cover those. Plus, there's something else to know, and that is I'm very bright. I know a lot about CRM, but I am not a coder. My name is not Karen Coder. Zoho has a bunch of things like functions and Zoho Flow, which is what, if you've ever heard of the term API programming, and Deluge, which is like a programming language. And we could do some wonderful stuff with that. But again, I am not a programmer. So I'm going to be teaching you guys the easy stuff. I'm not going to go into programming language. That would be a bad move for all of us. Trust me. And by the way, I think somebody that's on this call wanted to have some custom programming done. Zoho will do custom programming for you for free. The problem is they don't really show you how to put it in, and sometimes they make mistakes. So my solution to that is I have a great programmer on staff, and he does amazing things, very quickly and very inexpensively. So if there's something that you need to automate that I don't cover today, realize there are other options. You might have somebody on your own staff that knows API. Let them program away. I'm going to do the easy stuff. Okay, so the first feature or two features are workflow and action, and they kind of go hand in hand. You know, when you go into that automation area, you're going to see workflow and you're going to see action. You're going to say, well, what's the difference? Here's the difference. The purpose of the workflow is to automate your whole business process. And the purpose of an action is to perform a single task. Now, the real big differentiator is the trigger. Workflows happen off of an event. Something happens and it triggers the workflow. You make a change in a field, boom, workflow starts. You add a new contact, boom, workflow starts. You say, oh, I just closed this deal. They're going to buy the playground equipment. Boom, workflow starts. An action is just one of the parts of your workflow. You might have 7 or 8 actions that are in your workflow, if that makes sense. The actions are like the little, if you want to look at it, they're the single tasks or they're the building blocks within the workflow. So you could set up a task, and I get a lot of people that set up tasks and then or set up actions, and then they say to me, hey, Karen, they never ran. Well, yeah, an action isn't going to run by itself. It's only going to work if it's part of a workflow. I know this is kind of a complicated thought, but that's the way it works. Okay, so when we have a workflow, it has 3 parts. We have a trigger. That's when. When does this start? We have the condition, which records qualify for this workflow, and the action is what will happen and when. It's kind of like, what was that Clue game? It was Miss Scarlet in the dining room with the candlestick, kind of like that. So the when is what triggers the change. We changed a field. We added a new contact. We added a new account. We added a new deal. That's what that trigger is. Then which records is it going to be for? Is it going to be for all records, or only the records, maybe only for the contacts in the state of Alabama, or maybe only the contacts in Florida? And by the way, go Gators for any of you in Florida that went to UF. Very exciting. And so that condition is going to tell you which records will qualify for the rule. Yeah, okay, we got a Gator in our hands, on our midst. And then the action is what will happen and when. We could literally have something happen right away. You change something in one of your fields from maybe prospect to customer, and boom, something happens. We can have something happen a week from now, a month from now, a year from now. I don't know why you want something to happen a year from now. Oh, maybe it's a follow-up of some sort, but those are the 3 parts. So when we look at a workflow, and again, we hit the little startup, everything starts with that little rosebud, as I like to call it, or the gear shift for the guys in the crowd. That's your startup. We go to automation, and we have workflow rules. Zoho gave you one. My only problem with the one that they gave you is they named the action, the template, and the workflow. They all called it big deal rule. So it gets a little confusing about the 3 pieces, but I'll try to break it down for you. So you can also see that we can turn them on and turn them off. So if you're working on a workflow, you do not have to have it working right away. You could not, if you don't have it turned on, if the status is not green, that means you can play with that workflow, kind of think it out, plot it out, and then get it to work later. Just saying. So if you look at the big deal rule, and all you have to do is go into your workflows and click on it, you'll see exactly what I mean. The when, the condition, and the another condition, and the action. So the when, in this particular one, it says this rule will be executed when a deal is created or edited to meet the condition, if any. Okay, so when we add a deal or we change a deal, it's going to start this big deal rule. So what is it? The condition. The amount is greater than or equal to $1,000, and the probability is 100%. So that basically means if I close a deal and it's over $1,000, the workflow is going to trigger. If I create a deal and it's under $1,000 and I close it, nothing happens. If I have a deal over $1,000 and my probability is still at 50%, nothing happens. So we have conditions for when the stuff is going to go off. We could add multiple conditions. Again, if it's over $1,000, and if one of the products that's included is a swing set, and if the probability of closing is 100%, then trigger this to go off. I'm using playground equipment because it's just such a fun thing to use. I know, Missy, you do, I think, classes and conferences. You could do the same thing, when someone signs up for our class, that's going to be your trigger. And then you can have actions, and you can have either an instant action, which means it's going to happen right away, or you can have a scheduled action. So when we set up these activities that are going to happen, we can set up field updates. We can change the, some of the actions could be, we're going to change the, when someone buys and a deal closes, they go from prospect to customer. So we can make field changes. We can assign owners. Once the guy goes from our marketing department to he bought that playground set, now the owner is going to be the installer. So we can make changes to the ownership. Some of you use tags. I use tags. So I've got a little tag right at the top of all my contacts for people that have worked with Kim. So it makes it very easy to kind of know if they talk to me about something. Oh, it's one of Kim's clients and they've been working with her, and maybe I got to look at the notes a little bit. So we could set up a tag. We could set up activities, meetings, calls, tasks. We could create new records. I have somebody, I don't know if they're on the call, they're a wedding planner. And once somebody signs up for the wedding, they actually have custom modules for the photography section of the wedding, for the DJ section of the wedding, for the venue section. Those are all custom modules. So this could go and create records in all those custom modules for you. Now, we're going to skip over webhook and function and actions by Zoho Flow. This is where the programmers come into play and where they can say, oh, well, when this happens, on the website, have this happen in Zoho. So the sky's the limit with this stuff. But unfortunately, I'm kind of under the shady backyard umbrella right now. Just saying. And with our scheduled actions, we can schedule things for, again, an hour, a week, a year, a day, a month from now. So if you want to schedule an action for 3 years from now, probably not the best idea, but you could. So suggestions for when you might use a workflow. One of my suggestions I came up with lead creation. An instant action might be as soon as a lead comes in off of the website, they get sent an email. Hey, thanks for stopping by. We're going to be calling you shortly. And then you schedule an action that you're going to make a call. We have contact renewal dates. I know a lot of you have, you do repairs on equipment, or you have renewal dates of various sorts. So you can have at the renewal date, you can have it create an invoice 3 weeks before the renewal date. And then you can have it send a reminder, and out the reminder goes. We can do conference scheduling. You could send, first a course specific email that says, hey, this is all the stuff you're going to be learning in this course. And then you could send another one with accommodations. This is where you could stay. You might have 6 or 7 different emails that go out so that you don't. Some people like to send out a whole packet. Some people like to, maybe they don't know all the pieces yet. They want to parse it out a little bit and send it out a little bit at a time. That's up to you. Can anybody think of another reason for having a workflow in their own business? I know Jake, obviously you could have a great workflow around installing equipment, because I'm sure you have to order things and there's pieces and there's landscaping and probably all kinds of moving parts. Missy, I'm thinking with you with classes. Anybody else think of a reason for using a workflow? Okay, well, hopefully you will. Even if it just has 1 or 2 steps, and if those 2 steps save you time, they're worth it. So now we move on to the actions. And again, you go into the same setup area, automation, you look at the actions. And what it will do is it will list all the actions that you have. Okay, so I knew Missy would have some reason for using this. She popped in, assign a lead therapist to follow up with a lead. Yeah, when you get a lead and someone says, hey, we want to use your business, now you can assign the person to work with them. So yeah, absolutely. And we're going to be talking about user assignments in a minute too. So with the actions, you can go in, and again, if you set up an action in a workflow, these actions are going to be listed, and they're going to be separated by email actions, tasks, and field updates. So you can see anything that you have, and you can set up new actions. But the problem is you can't really do anything with the actions from here. But again, you can see, this will list all of your actions that you set up in your various workflows, and it'll show you the association. So if I look at this big deal alert, there'll be three little dots right after it. And if I click the three little dots, it'll, one of the things is show their association. So it will show you where this action is being used. And by the way, it will also say delete. Do you want to delete this action? And you better bet your booties that it will not, for making comments in the Q&A. Someone says, is there a chat area? Yeah, there is a chat area. Unfortunately, I don't always look in the chat area because I'm doing this by myself and I got too many windows to look at. So if you could possibly put things in the Q&A, it would be a lot easier for me because I might not get to that chat. So I'd really appreciate if you could do the Q&A. It's just easier for me to look at. Okay, and especially the person that asked that question is one of the people that I keep picking on during this meeting. Anyway, we can, if you go in and you hit those three little ellipses, you'll see delete action. By the way, you cannot delete an action if it's part of a workflow. It will not let you because it knows your workflow will not work. So again, we can go into all those actions and we can see where they've been used. If it was an email notification, it'll show you the name of the template. In this case, they use the big deal alert template. So actions, again, when we hit those three buttons, we can view their associations. You might want to change something, like maybe before it was alerting you by email when something happened. Maybe you now want just a pop-up reminder instead of an email. Maybe you feel like you're getting too many emails. So you might make a quick little change there. Your field update, maybe it was updating, you had it set to update, this custom field 1 with the value Jim. And now you said, you know what, instead of updating custom field 1, I want to keep that same workflow, but I just want to change the task in there. So it's going to update field number 2, or it's going to update my assigned field, or it's going to update a different field, and I'm going to put different values in there. So that's why we would go into the actions, because you could kind of tweak if that workflow isn't working 100%. So some quick tips. We have something called Zaya, and you're going to see this all over Zoho. The sad thing is Zoho was way ahead of its time because Zaya stands for Zoho's, I just thought AI, okay? But because they were ahead of the term, or ahead of the time, they called it IA, Zaya. So basically it means this is where you could use a little bit of AI to help you. So if you set up some workflows, like you can see, I've got a number of workflows here. Zaya now has a handle on what I'm doing. And I'm not saying these are going to be perfect, but you could certainly try them. It will give you some suggestions. I didn't even know this. I went in when I was preparing this webinar and I was like, oh my goodness, Zaya, set up a little bit of artificial intelligence for me and came up with some suggestions for workflows. I haven't had a chance to look at them yet, but when I do, I'll look at those suggestions. Kind of a cool thing. Another quick tip is just keep it simple. Use a couple, start with a couple of very basic workflows. I had a client that came over from ACT about 4 years ago. He has 50 users. He has a couple of different businesses, a lot of complicated stuff that he does, and he went apeshit, pardon my French, over this. He got so excited and he just started building workflows, and a lot of them he had triggering literally every minute of the day. Well, Zoho gives you, every time one of these things gets triggered, it's called a call, and Zoho gives you, I don't even remember, something like 100,000 calls a month. So these things can trigger many times before you're going to get an extra charge. Well, he started getting extra charges, I kid you not, of thousands of dollars. And he called me and he said, what the heck? And I said, what the heck? And I could see that he was being charged for these calls. So the problem is he had too many of them and they were going off all the time. And I said, well, does it really need to be checking your accounting software every single minute of the day? Could we maybe just take that down to once a day. Would that maybe work? So it was amazing, just making some changes. We got rid of all those overages. But the other thing, and I swear, I don't know for certain, but this feature came out right after I dealt with that issue, is you can go into, under data administration, you could go into your admin tools and you could look at your workflows. This is so cool. This was like eye-opening when I worked with this client, because it will show you your workflows. It'll show you the date they were created. And it'll show you the last time they were executed. Now, I took the screenshot last week. I have two custom, and Amy, this is kind of what you're looking to do. I have two custom workflows. One is for phone format. I am very OCD about phone numbers. I type in phones. A lot of times I just copy and paste them off of someone's email signature. Sometimes I just type in spaces. Sometimes I type in dots. But at the end of the day, I want all my phone numbers to have parentheses and a dash, parenthesis around the area code, first 3 digits, dash, and then the last 4 digits. It's easier for me to read. I like it that way. I'm a little bit of OCD. So that's one of my workflows. Another one is copy fields. So when I create fields on an account record, I have it copy it into my contacts. And Amy, that's what Zoho wrote for you. But what they didn't tell you is exactly where to put it in. And I kind of looked at it and I knew what it was. I recognized it from mine. I don't know how accurate it is. You could certainly try putting it in and seeing if it works. But you can see that even though these were set up a while ago, I have used them. And I keep using them. So it really worked with this client. We went in there and he must have had, I kid you not, probably over 100 workflows, and half of them had never been used the first time. So if your workflow was set up, 2 months ago and it had never been used, chances are pretty good that you don't need it. So then we have assignment rules. Assignment rules are kind of very easy. Assignment rules are if you have leads coming in. Again, I had that client that we looked at his leads and he had like 40,000 leads that nothing had ever been done with them. He didn't know what to do with them. Well, he could have very easily have assigned them based on certain criteria. So when we do an assignment rule, we create a new assignment rule. You can choose the module. This could be for leads. It could be for deals. Maybe if you have deals and once the deal closes, now it's going to be assigned to your installation people. Or maybe when a new lead comes in, you want to kind of round robin it with all your salespeople. Maybe you want to assign it by a territory. So this is how I assign leads by a territory. I said, okay, we're going to call this assign rep because I have no imagination. That's what I called it. And I chose a module, leads. And I went over here and I created a rule. And I said, okay, if it's in the state of Florida, go Gators, or it's in the state of Georgia, Bulldogs, sorry, I'm going to assign it to Allison. And we can check the availability. If you go into your user profile, you can have working hours. So let's say, I don't know if this pertains to anybody on this call, but I do work with some people that have overseas workers. So they're there from like 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern, and then they start from 5 p.m. to, I guess, 9 a.m. Eastern. They have a call center that picks up the stuff. So you can actually say, well, if her online status, if she's not there, it's not during the day, then have it assigned to somebody else. And you can base it on shifts. And you can say, okay, if it comes in during this time period, it goes to Allison. If it comes into this time period, it goes to Jake. All kinds of neat things, for your assignment rules. Not all of you are going to use it, but it is cool. So those assignment rules, you can also set a threshold. My husband's an attorney, and they kind of do that same thing. They have cases, and I know they try to keep his caseload somewhere between 125 and 150 cases. They figure anything over that, and he'd probably go start creating mad. So then it overflows when he gets to a certain point, and it overflows to like one of the other associates. So this is kind of that same thing. You could say, well, I've got one of my users, and once I think she can handle 255 leads. Once she gets up to 255, And don't forget, if she works those leads, maybe those leads become customers. So you say, hey, I'm not going to give her more than 255 or 1,000 or 2,000, because any more than that, it seems like she's not working through those low leads, or there's too much that she needs to, be doing. So you could set up a threshold. There's also Zaya, and I know I keep talking about this, but there's just all this AI that's been filtered in to this program. If you've been using Zoho for a while, there's a little bit of caveats here. You have to have 10,000 records in your database. You have to have a number of different record owners. It will try to figure out, based on your data, who would be the best record owner for new lead. So it might say, oh, Sally lives in New York, so she should be getting all these leads that are coming in from the Northeast, and Jake lives in Florida, and he should be getting all the ones that are coming in from the South. So it's kind of cool. You could try these. I'm not saying they're going to work, but they might. It's kind of cool that they at least try. It might give you an idea. So then we have scoring rules. Scoring rules are really super easy. If you have ever gone bowling, you probably can figure out these scoring rules in a minute. And what it does is identifies the engagement of your leads, your contacts, your deals, and your accounts. How involved are they? Are you getting any response from them? And then you can create a report card. So the idea is I created a scoring rule here, and I said, okay, I want to identify my top customers, and I based it on my contact module. And you can also do it like some people like to measure the temperature of their prospects. They have warm leads, cold leads, and hot leads. And how do you measure that? Do you stick a thermometer, in their ear? Probably not. But you can go in here and create a rule and say, okay, I'm going to add my criteria. And you could say, well, if this certain field they had a demo, they're going to get whopping 25 points for that. And every time they open one of my emails, they're going to get 10 points for that. And if they click on some of the links within my email, for more information, click here, they're going to get 20 points for that. And, Zoho is looking at all this stuff in the background. So it's going to keep score. So if you keep sending emails to these leads and they're opening them and they're clicking on them, their score is going to go up. If they're getting these leads and they're going into their spam filter, or they're just deleting them, their score is not going to be good. And if they bounce, we can actually take points away. And we can actually add a field. Where would you like the score to go? So it's kind of a one-step shopping, and it's a pretty good way to measure your leads, how what would you say, how engaged they are with your business, or to identify your really top customers. Who are the people that are really interested in what you have to say? So now we have cadences, and cadences are the closest thing to activity series, but I kind of call them the activity series on steroids because they do a lot more. So here was the old activity series template, and you could set up calls, meetings, to-dos, period. No email, no reminders, no field changes, calls, meetings, and to-dos. And you could either assign it to yourself, if you set it up, or you could assign it to other people. So it could be going to the scheduling user or to other specific people. And it was kind of cool, but the problem was you had to have manual intervention. You had to click on a contact and say, okay, you're going to get that activity series. The other thing, of course, is if you move to Act for Web, you could use your activity series, but you couldn't create new ones because they left that feature out of Act for Web, because I think they thought, I see a number of people here used activity series, but apparently the folks at Act didn't think it was a viable feature, so they're removing it from Act for Web. So you could use existing ones, but you couldn't create new ones. They also didn't allow for if-then situations. If the customer does that, then run it. It was only manual intervention. Go in there and run it. And a lot of times some of these things didn't fit. You had to go back and you had to delete certain tasks out of this activity series because it just didn't fit. So Workflows versus cadences, because I get people that ask me, well, what's the difference between a workflow and a cadence? A workflow is really meant for you to keep you on track, to make your life easier, to make sure none of your contacts fall through the cracks of your database. Cadence are designed really to engage your customers or your contacts. They're meant more for those sequential follow-ups with your customers or with your leads. Okay, that's a big difference. So, a cadence. Again, we go into automation. We create a cadence. We give it a name. So I could call it new customer onboarding if I wanted. I pick the module, and you can do this for deals, accounts, leads, contacts. Who is this? They also ask, who is this for? You can actually do this for custom view. So as soon as you put somebody in a certain custom view, maybe you have a custom view that, if they're in this state and they've ordered a playground equipment and they've done this and they've done that, that's part of your custom view. As soon as somebody matches those criteria, boom, they get it. Or you can also manually enroll them. Maybe you don't want to do that much automation. Maybe you want to decide when you're going to put them in this cadence. So if you're looking at a contact record, like here's Simon, he looks like someone that might be getting married soon. You could go over here and you could hit the plus sign next to cadences, and you can manually enter him into the new customer onboarding or the marriage planning phase or whatever cadences you want to create. Now, hold your breath on this one. When we create our cadences, they start with 5 levels of follow-ups. And basically, you just go in there and you just add follow-ups. You could have an email, a task, a call, and you just start adding the tasks, okay? And when we do like if we're setting up a task, for example, we could say, okay, this is going to start immediately after a previous task. Or we can have a trigger date. Your trigger date is when you add the client into the cadence. So you could say, well, 15 days after I added them to the cadence, I want you to set up this task, or 5 minutes later, or 1 day later. And you can also select users. We're going to assign this task to Jake. We're going to assign this task to Amy. We're going to assign this task to Missy. Or if we don't select users, it's going to automatically do the task for the record owner of that record. Now, here's where it gets really fun. If you've ever done project management, you may be familiar with the term Gantt chart. Normally, Gantt charts are like a pyramid from the top to the bottom, and you start at the top, and then it forks off, and then your left fork might have 2 things related to it, and your right fork has 3 things related to it. This is the same thing, but instead of doing it top to bottom, they do it left to right. I guess they figured they could give you more space. So here's an example. We set up this wedding book, and that happens right on the trigger date, and it's assigned to Allison McCullough. Now that has 2 follow-ups. It has call the photographer and check the lighting at the venue. Those are 2 tasks. And this one is going to be 1 day after the trigger date. This one's going to be 3 days after the trigger date. Now this one, checking the lighting, might have 2 or 3 tasks involved to it. And this one, call the photographer, that might have 2 or 3 tasks involved with it. And then each one of these can spin off, et cetera, and so forth. I didn't really put a whole lot of thought into this. I just wanted to kind of show you that once we get to level 6, is automatically going to add level 7. So you could set up all these calls, these emails, these tasks. You can set them to trigger off of the previous task, or you can have them trigger off of the trigger date, if you will. So you can go crazy with this cadence, and you can add, if you have like a whole onboarding thing that you have to do every time you sell a new product, cadence is probably the way for you to go. So I like to think of the workflow as maybe working through your leads and kind of the before, and the cadence might be a little bit more after. So our key takeaways from this webinar are there are many types of automations in Zoho. The do-it-yourself options are going to be your workflow, your scoring, your assignment rules, and your cadences. We do have others. And hang on, I'm trying to move this so I can see this. Someone just said, Jake just says, I can't wait to never manually schedule an activity series again. Or as he said, an inactivity series, because sometimes they didn't work. I literally had a client that moved to Zoho, and I think that they had, I got to go back and look at my notes. They had somewhere between 25 and 40 activity series. And I mean, because it was a wedding, and you can imagine if you're a bride and the photographer doesn't show up, it's not going to turn out well. So yeah, these cadences are a very cool replacement for the activity series. We also have custom programming available to us. So if there's something, start with the DIY stuff, the easy stuff, the low-hanging fruit. And then if you need the more advanced stuff, you can reach out to Zoho, try them. It may or may not work, or like I said, I have a great programmer who's very reasonably priced, and we can get you a quote for doing some custom stuff. As always, I have bonuses. My first bonus is, remember, we have a sandbox, and this is not Jake's sandbox where he's putting in cool playground equipment. This is a kind of nerdy playground for people like me that like to try things. So if you go into your setup and go into data administration, you have a sandbox. You can go in, literally will copy your database over into the sandbox, and you could start playing with some of these workflows and trying them out and seeing how they work and putting in some test cases before you put them out. And remember, out to all your users. And remember that workflow, we didn't have to start using them right away. We could start building them and then turn them on later. So that's bonus number one. Bonus number two might be too late for some of the people on this meeting, but I'm just getting a slew of this, and I finally figured it out. I'm getting some people that can't log into their databases. We set them up, and everything is going great. And then there's always one user that can't seem to log into the database. And it took me the longest time to figure out what was going wrong. And I finally figured it out. So if you've got other users that you're going to add to your database, please share this information with them. When I set you up in a trial, do not have them set up their own trials. They will be making their own little database. It will have nothing to do with your database. And then it's going to be really, really tricky for them to join the actual company because they've already created their own demo and their own little company. But the other thing is, if I've set you up, we've moved all your data over, and you're ready to start deploying the rest of your users, you're going to tell them to go to Zoho, crm.zoho.com. Here we are, crm.zoho.com. And this screen is going to open up. And they're going to see this getting started, and it's in red, and it's big, and they're going to want to click it, and they will. And then they're going to go here, and it's going to say, oh, get started with your 15-day free trial. And so they're going to be so happy, and they're going to type in their name and maybe their company name and their email address. And then they're going to open up Zoho, and they're not going to see any of the company's data because they have now created their own little world, which has nothing to do with the rest of the world. Amy, I think you might have had that problem with somebody. Rebecca, I know we're going through that problem right now. Jennifer, you had one user that was a little bit more complicated, but they were, involved. In their case, they didn't do it intentionally, but someone kind of got them involved in another environment. I know it's small, but it says sign in. And someone's laughing, but yes, it's happened. And I feel so bad because it's really tough. I can get it fixed, but it takes me a while. And usually I have to reach out to Zoho, and sometimes it can take weeks to get it fixed. So please, that's my word of warning. When you get your new users, either on your trial or on your actual database, tell them it's small. Tell them to get out their bifocals, but click on that sign in button. That's how we get into the database. We don't start our own little trial. That ain't going to work. Okay. Questions. Again, if you haven't started using Zoho, I think everybody on this meeting is using Zoho, but if you're still thinking about it, make sure you contact me for a test drive so I can show you some of the ins and outs, and you receive 3 months free. Our next meeting is going to be Wednesday, April 23rd, and Missy, check my dates because you know I always get the dates wrong, so if I made a mistake, let me know. And I think what I'm going to do, it's probably going to be a really short meeting, but I think I'm going to work on the Zoho Marketplace phone integrations. I don't know how many of you are interested in phones. Well, somebody is. I got a thumbs up, and that's good. I have gone through 5 phone companies, so I think I know the ins and outs, and it's funny. I ended up with the one that I started with. My husband said to me the other day, I said, oh, I'm moving my phone company again. He just says, I'm praying you're going back to the first company you were with. And I'm like, yep, because some of these companies were not real good. Experiences were not real good. So just want to kind of show you what they can do and what to look for. Maybe your own phone company, if you're working with somebody now and you really like them, chances are pretty good that they have a Zoho integration. So unless I have any other questions, I'm going to bid you adieu. Let me just double check. Sure, don't have any questions. Unrelated question. Does Zoho's SMS allow us to send, receive text from our own phone number? So SMS requires permissions, and it's not Zoho's necessarily SMS. Zoho does have a phone service, and then you have to, SMS is not free, and they make you go through this whole rigmarole about, well, I'm not going to be spamming people and I'm not going to be doing things I shouldn't be doing. So there's kind of a permission thing, kind of like they do with email. Some companies are a little bit looser on the SMS usage. Zoho is pretty, they don't believe in spam, and they're pretty stringent in their requirements. That wasn't an unrelated question. It was a great question to ask. I know a lot of you want to use SMS just to confirm appointments, and it's just like your phone. When you have a phone system, you're going to find a phone system that includes X amount of SMS, per month, and then it's kind of permission based. All righty, I'm going to bid you adieu. Happy almost spring. I hope you enjoy the Easter Bunny or the Passover matzah or whatever your holiday may be, and I will see you on the 23rd. Thanks, everybody. Bye.